The NBA draft lottery left Raptors fans bitterly disappointed with the results, but even though the Raptors did lose their pick to the San Antonio Spurs, some good still came out of the situation, and it could set up the Raptors to make a huge trade in the offseason. In this video, I'm going to explain why. Let's get into it. And for starters, I still feel as though a lot of people have some sort of copium when it comes to this situation. They're trying to spin a lot of pros that maybe aren't really there when it comes to the Raptors losing out on that top 6 pick of the 2024 NBA draft lottery, slipping out of the top 6, falling to the 8th pick, which obviously conveys to the San Antonio Spurs, leaves a lot of disappointment in the fan base, and there are a lot of negatives associated with the unfortunate lottery luck not going the way of the Toronto Raptors. Even though there aren't a lot of pros, there still are some pros associated with this whole situation, and one in particular is on the trade front, which could allow for Masai Ujiri to make a big splash on an upcoming superstar that could be available for trade, and there could be a bunch available in the offseason, as there typically may be with the NBA season, and I'll explain why the Raptors are now back in the mix for these sorts of players. Before we go any further, reminder, this is Amidst Sports, the YouTube channel completely dedicated to Toronto Raptors content in videos like this, as well as live stream watch parties on the channel. Drop a like if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel for more, help us on the road to 18,000 subscribers. So one of the things that angered me initially about the Jakob Poeltl trade, when the Raptors made that trade to the 2023 NBA trade deadline, it wasn't just the Raptors losing out on their 2024 first round pick potentially for a team that probably wasn't heading in the right direction at the time. It wasn't trending upwards. It wasn't looking like it was going to be any sort of threat in the playoffs. So why lose out on a draft pick? Why lose out on a draft pick when you are the Toronto Raptors? The best thing you do on a year-to-year basis is find talent in the draft. And so often, Masai Ujiri's front office has given away the right to draft a player in the first round, given away the opportunity to bring in talent to the team. I would say the best opportunity for them to bring in talent to the team by trying to find some sort of quick fixes to the team, like acquiring Trae Young with a first-round pick and then acquiring Jakob Poeltl with a first-round pick. None of that really made sense to me, and it continues to baffle me why they went in these sorts of directions. The best thing that this franchise does is use their draft picks to find talent in the draft. I mean, when it comes to free agency, the Raptors are just virtually non-existent. It may not be the fault of the front office. It might just be the market that the Raptors are in. It might just be the country the Raptors are in. This is not one of the more attractive free agent destinations. It just kind of is what it is at this point. We have to recognize that, and we have to kind of go through the hurdle of that when trying to build a winning team. But one thing the Raptors haven't quite done to try and bring in talent in the Masai Ujiri era, well, maybe they've tried it, but one thing they haven't actually executed is trading for a superstar player by shelling out those draft assets. They brought in Kawhi Leonard. It didn't cost them too much, honestly. It was DeMar DeRozan and a first-round pick alongside Jakob Poeltl, of course, but it was just one first-round pick that was involved in that situation. What the Jakob Poeltl trade did in 2023 when he was brought back to the Raptors was it tied up future draft assets. And this is something, again, that angered me about the trade when it happened. Not only were you giving away a first-round pick, but if the Raptors did want to be a team that tries to go all in with the core, which, maybe this decision actually took away what could have been maybe an even worse decision down the line. But what it did take away was Toronto's flexibility to make trades. Because of the protections associated with the pick that was sent over to the San Antonio Spurs, the Raptors, who had traded away the 2024 pick, obviously could not trade that. Because that 2024 pick could have conveyed to the Spurs, the 2025 pick would have been a consecutive pick, and therefore that couldn't be traded due to the Stepien rule. The same can be said about the 2026 pick in case the pick conveyed in 2025, and the same can be said about the 2027 pick. So the Raptors essentially were not able to trade more than 2 first-round picks to acquire talent to bring into the team at that moment. And after going almost doubling down in that core with Jakob Poeltl, bringing him in at the 2023 trade deadline, it looked like the front office was focused on bringing in even more talent to the team, which they were not capable of doing because they had tied up all of those draft assets. Well, one of the pros in this whole situation of losing the pick at the 2024 draft lottery, once again, all of the Raptors' draft assets are open for business and open for the Raptors to make a trade. And when it comes to Masai Ujiri, if a superstar or a star player in the NBA does become available, he is always going to dip his toes in the water. He is always going to send out some feelers, and he's always going to try and cut a deal. And as it happens in this offseason, there's a potential for a multitude of real superstar caliber players to become available for trade. Let's consider the Cleveland Cavaliers situation. This one is pretty easy. Ultimately, they finished with the 4 seed. It's hard to call this one a bit of a disappointment, but you just sense with this Cleveland team that it isn't really going anywhere. They are not one of the premier teams in the NBA. They are not going to be as good as the Boston Celtics. They likely won't be as good as the Milwaukee Bucks once that team is healthy. The Philadelphia 76ers will be back next season. Look how good the New York Knicks are right now. They don't feel like one of the premier teams in the NBA. And Donovan Mitchell, even himself, grew some frustrations near the end of the regular season, saying, essentially, it's March and we're still playing like this, discussing how the team still hasn't really clicked in March, right before the start of the NBA playoffs. I know right now they are in the second round. At the time of recording, they're down 3-1 to the Boston Celtics. I'm going to safely assume that they lose that series. They get eliminated in the second round. Donovan Mitchell has 1 year left on his contract before he has a player option worth around $37 million. I assure you, Donovan Mitchell is going to get more than that in free agency, and I would be shocked beyond belief if he did take that player option. So essentially, we can consider Donovan Mitchell to have 1 year left on his contract. This Cleveland situation, they used all the picks to get Donovan Mitchell. So this Cleveland situation, I don't see any real way for that team to really bolster themselves in the offseason unless they were to trade Evan Mobley, which I think they actually could consider or should consider doing, but I don't think they will do that. So they're mostly left with the same sort of team. And as far as Donovan Mitchell's aspirations, maybe that team doesn't quite meet them, and perhaps he's looking to sign for a new team next summer. At least that's what it's kind of building up to. So the Cleveland Cavaliers, perhaps if they're smart, they might look to trade Donovan Mitchell this offseason and capitalize on the asset now, bring something back in return rather than risk losing him for free in the summer. Next summer, all of a sudden, Donovan Mitchell could be available for trade, and look who has all these draft picks ready to shell out and tradable contracts ready to shell out in Toronto to make that happen. Let's consider the Atlanta Hawks situation with Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, more so Trae Young. That team really hasn't gone anywhere. That team really isn't quite ready to say it's going somewhere right now. But Jalen Johnson looks like a really good player to start building the team with. And hey, a first overall pick out of nowhere is a great start to try and build the team going forward. Maybe retool, maybe refresh. Build with Jalen Johnson, build with Alex Sarr, who I think they're going to take with the first overall pick in the 2024 NBA entry draft, and bring in even more assets by potentially trading Trae Young. If all of a sudden Trae Young becomes available, because the Hawks feel as though a reset is in order for the team, guess who has the draft assets and the tradable contracts to try and make a move at this? The Toronto Raptors all of a sudden have complete freedom with their draft assets for the future to try and make a big splash like this. And as I said, Masai Ujiri is typically somebody who does indeed try and make a move and try and finesse his way into getting a superstar into this team. Now, it hasn't quite worked in the past. Typically, he has kind of lowballed in these situations, but if he really wants to expedite this process, all signs are pointing towards a rebrand for the Raptors. Maybe MLSE is pushing for this team to be better next season, a lot better in the next season for the Raptors. Masai Ujiri absolutely has some tools to play with and some assets to play with to try and make a deal happen here. My big question, obviously the Raptors could be planning something like this. They could be eyeing the big trade here. Is this the right move for the team? As much as I was upset about the Raptors tying up their assets, it was almost in a way good because it forced Masai Ujiri to not make a superstar trade with that core that we kind of felt wasn't really going anywhere. It forced Masai Ujiri to stand pat, to stay put with his assets. Now, that could have been different in the last offseason when Damian Lillard became available. I did want to make a move for Damian Lillard, so the Raptors didn't really have as much necessarily of an opportunity to do so in that regard. However, it kind of tied up the asset and forced Masai Ujiri to keep the picks, which is almost good because, like I said earlier on in the video, the best thing this franchise does is draft talent, find talent in the draft. So they're forced to keep those picks. Now they have another opportunity to trade them away. The Raptors, Masai Ujiri, stop trading your first-round picks away. You're very good at this whole draft thing. Give yourself more opportunities to find that talent to supplement the core. If they feel as though the time is right to, really make the splash, you've got Scotty Barnes still on his rookie contract for another year. You've got Emmanuel Quickly, you've got RJ Barrett, you've got Grady Dick. If now is the time, or at least that is the assessment, they are capable of doing so. But for me, as I've said in previous videos with the platform here, patience, I think, is the right move for the Raptors right now. Just get a bit more of a feel next season for what this core is, how well it is positioned around Scotty Barnes, who you can give yourself a good degree of confidence right now is the star player for this team going forward and is the centerpiece that you can build around going forward. That's a positive sign, but I don't think there is a need to rush this whole process. This was a whirlwind of a season here. Let's try to land on our feet and an attempt to hit the ground running this season and see where it takes us before coming up with a rash decision like making a trade. But hey, one pro that did come out of the whole draft lottery fiasco, if the Raptors want to dabble with a superstar trade, they're certainly capable of making something happen as a result of getting all of the assets back under their control. So what do you think? Should the Raptors make a big splash for one of those superstar players that I alluded to, or potentially another player? Give me your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, because that's it for me for today for this video. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel for more Raptors content. Helps on the road to 18,000 subscribers, and I'll see you again very soon for another video here on Amateur Sports.